everyone, and welcome to the Macabre Podcast Universe.
Yuck. Macabre Podcast Universe.
Yes, and this is the podcast that exists to prove people wrong when they say
sequels are never better than the originals.
And we are going through Back to the Future, finally.
Yeah.
And we're on our second episode, which means we are going to the future this time. We're not going to the past.
Well, we might.
Until a little later.
Yeah.
And with us, we have Max Miller. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and it's sort of funny to pull back the curtain. You have a pretty steady Twitter following, way out of my league on Twitter. And
yeah, I do. I don't know why, to be honest. I don't know why people choose to follow me, but yeah, it's maybe I spend too much time on my phone and social media in general. I would probably fit right in with where Back to the Future 2 takes us, to be honest, as far as technology goes.
So you're, I reached out to you like a long time ago because you had this show where you were breaking down the opening credits of TV shows.
Yeah, and movies. Yeah.
Oh, and movies too.
Right.
And I discovered it because I'm a big fan of Jessica McKenna, and I was like, hey, I'm a musician. I should reach out. And then it stayed unread, which happens all the time. And then all of a sudden, like 6 months later, you were like, hey, I'm so sorry, I never saw this message. And we got to talking. It was like, hey, why don't you come on the show? And it took years. And now we finally met you now.
Years?
It did.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been years.
I don't know. I didn't know years.
Yeah, it really did. It's funny because, I was doing that other podcasts, and we were talking about like all movies, all TV shows. Nothing was off limits. It was all about any entertaining end credits. We went through them. I spun that off into a podcast with my fiance that became Bob's Credits, which is all dedicated to the Bob's Burgers end credit sequences.
Awesome.
And that's our primary podcast now, and that's what we do. And that one's just like blown up since then, and it's it's a lot of fun. So it's still in the kind of the wheelhouse, just that we've like honed in on one thing now. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're happy to have you, and I was hoping you could let us know, because I'm always curious, because I will, whenever we invite a guest on, I'll send them the schedule that we have so far, and you, like, without a doubt, just jumped right on Back to the Future too.
Yeah, no question.
And I'd love to hear about your experience with this movie and why you chose it.
Sure. I was born in 1982, so I feel like I was in that sweet spot for a movie like this by the time the second one came out.
Yeah.
Like, I'd already seen Back to the Future as a kid. But this was like my first going to a movie, and it's got some action and some like excitement, and it's not like a kid's movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not so, it's not an adult's movie necessarily either.
Yeah.
So it was like the perfect movie for that, for the age that I was. So that's why number 2 popped out to me. What's funny is I think number 1 is a perfect movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Solo. I think number 1's perfect, but number 2 holds a special place in my heart because that was where I was as a kid. Yeah. And that's what I remember seeing in the theaters. And all you wanted to do as a kid was see the future, and you loved the hoverboard, and every kid on the planet wanted a hoverboard after this movie. So that's why number 2 was the one out of the 3 that I definitely wanted to jump on top of.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's it's interesting because I feel like pretty much everybody agrees Back to the Future 1 perfect. We talked about it last.
Yeah, we said perfect
episode.
probably like 50 times.
Yeah, it's
when
just
describing that movie.
Every decision is a great decision that they make. And 2, I think it's pretty clearly lower than Back to the Future 1, but there's just this the audacity of ideas and the craziness of returning to the first movie and all that. It's just like, it's still a really special and cool movie, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the stuff they decided to take on,
Yeah.
plus all the hurdles they kind of had to jump, which I'm sure we'll get into as we're talking through the movie, to make it all happen. It's a hell of a movie.
Yeah.
It's crazy that they pulled it off the way they did. And it's really fun. Like, I think, so I just watched it 2 nights ago, probably for the first time that I've sat down and watched it from beginning to end in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so fun.
Yeah. So Jordan, what is your experience with this movie?
I can't remember the first time I watched this. It kind of goes back to our last episode where like Back to the Future 1 and 2 I just saw on TV all the time.
Right.
But I have seen this movie from beginning to end in one sitting before. But this again was like watching it for the first time.
Right.
Because there was a lot that I just had forgotten about. And
you had a few pause moments when we were watching it where you're like, hang on a second.
Oh, because I had
pause
questions?
it? Yeah, because you're like, wait, how are we here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, just in terms of like, I don't remember it this way.
Right, exactly.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I haven't watched it in so long. And it was fun. It is interesting. I will never have watched the Back to the Future trilogy so close together.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting watch.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as far as it's just such a fun trilogy because I feel like it does a lot of firsts that other series later do so much. So one of them, for people who don't know, back in I believe the 70s, there was this movie based on the Three Musketeer books.
Mm-hmm.
And so they made this movie called The Three Musketeers. And as they were filming it, they realized we're not going to be able to film this whole story. So they filmed at the same time The Four Musketeers. And Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, when they were starting to work on this idea, they're coming up with all these ideas, which I'll get into in a second. But then they decide, it'd be fun if they went to the Wild West, but they had all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so then they thought, well, let's do what the Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers did.
Yeah.
And do that. And then now it's like a staple in Hollywood. Like, if you're going to make a finale, you got to do a Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Back to the Future, Avengers. Like, you film them all at one time.
Yeah.
And this is where that kind of starts. Besides, of course, it obviously started with the Three Musketeers.
But that wasn't planned.
Right.
From what you've said. So it's interesting.
And they didn't have hoverboards,
and
too.
they didn't.
So.
Yeah. Not so far as I know. I haven't seen it.
That's true. I haven't either. So I'll check Wikipedia later and just make sure that's the case. But even that's not for sure.
But yeah, and just kind of the idea of like, I'm a huge sucker for whenever a movie ends and then the sequel begins with no time having taken place.
Yeah.
Like, this movie starts and they recreate the beginning of the movie.
I don't think I've ever,
or the end of the last movie.
So I have not seen the third one. I'll say that now. That's one that I've also kind of seen on TV, but I really have not seen the third one. But what is just so fun watching them so close together, I'm like, man, Marty has the craziest weekend of his life.
Yeah.
God, he's so tired.
Yeah, that's true. It's his like 1985 life is just like
he's
2
living,
days or something.
He's living
like
multiple
that.
lives in like 2 days. Well, I guess he spent like a week in the first movie in 1955, but whatever.
But still, yeah. And I don't remember how the third one ends, so I don't know if he ever takes Jennifer on that camping trip.
Wow. Bummer for her.
I bet he does.
Poor Jennifer.
Yeah.
We'll get into that too, right? Because she got a bum rap in this one.
She really,
she did.
Really did.
She did. So, yeah, I guess that's a great segue. Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis did not.
When did this movie come out? What year?
1989.
89.
It came out November 22nd, 1989.
Okay.
On a $40 million budget.
Okay.
And it made $118 million domestic.
All right.
And $331.9 worldwide.
Got
it. Yeah, so at the end of Back to the Future 1, Doc grabs Marty and Jennifer, and they fly away. And Zemeckis has cited that as proof that they never intended to make a sequel. Because him and Bob were like, dang it, why did we do that? Because now we're making a sequel and we have no interest in this character. Which the movie definitely shows, and at least they're honest about it on the one hand. But
they're like, yeah, every time she has a couple of lines, they're like, just knock her out.
Yep. Yeah. She's talking too much.
Yeah.
Literally, she's asking too many questions.
Yeah. Which is, as far as like women representation in Hollywood, not great, but at least they're honest about it. But really, that's not great. But yeah, so they had, I'm forgetting the first actress's name. Do you remember from Back to the Future one?
Yeah. Claudia Wells, is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah. So she did not return. She was supposed to be in both of these movies, but her mother got sick and she just like left the industry for years.
Oh, wow.
And just did not want to work, did not want to be a part of it. Perfectly commendable to me.
Yeah.
So they recast her.
Uh-huh.
And that's recast number 1. And as you were talking about kind of issues that plague the movie, I would say that's one. Although since she's in the first movie so little.
Do you have a problem with the actress? Or just that they recast it at all? It just is like...
Yeah, it's like, well, that's a problem you have to solve and you have to figure out.
Yeah.
So they do that. And then they're talking to... So basically, the studios go to Bob and Bob and they say, can you make more? And they say, we will only do it if Christopher Lloyd and
Michael J.
Fox. I wanted to say Jamie Foxx. Michael J. Fox want to make the movie and sign on. And they say, yeah, we'll do it as long as Bob and Bob are involved.
Okay.
So they do it. And then they start talking to all the actors. That's when they have to figure out a recast. But then there was another recast that I didn't even realize till I was watching the making of. And that is...
George McFly.
Yeah, Crispin Glover. He wanted to get paid more. And according to Bob Gale, he was asking for just like so much money that someone of his stature, it was ridiculous.
Okay.
Crispin has said that they were only offering him $125,000.
Wow. Okay.
And he was like, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense to me. But then in 2013, he said, as we discussed last episode, that he had such a intense philosophical disagreement with how the first movie ends with them getting money and getting the American dream instead of love.
Yeah.
That he was kind of being like, I don't want to sign on.
Like he just wasn't
this.
interested in it at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've heard, I don't know, that he is notoriously difficult to work with. I know probably about as much as Crispin Glover as I do the Three Musketeers, so I can't really vouch personally for him. But I have heard multiple stories of him being difficult, so I'm sure it was not quite as simple as like that the movie did not end with pure love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We kind of talked about that a little, like, briefly in the last episode about how he's kind of has a history potentially of being difficult to work with.
Yeah. So,
but what's interesting, let's say he's in the movie, like, based on what we have, what would he have, like he's probably barely shown because they didn't get Crispin Glover.
Well,
but
to answer that, they when they found out he wasn't going to be in it, they were like, oh, well, let's just kill him. So that idea they hadn't even thought of until they couldn't get him.
But it didn't like ruin the movie for them or anything.
Yeah, once he doesn't sign on, then they say, well, let's just write him out of the movie.
Okay.
And then that inspires their decision to, in the future, when George McFly is there, he's upside down.
Yeah.
Because no one's really going to notice. I have to admit, last night, I had no clue that wasn't Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
Because he has even more old age makeup on.
Well, they're not like doing close-ups of him or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah, it's such a great way to cover it up. And it's fun too. Like I will forever remember George McFly coming in upside down on that little like whatever that is, that drone that carries him around.
Was it for his back?
Yeah, I think he said something about hurting it at the golf course, right?
Okay.
Yes, yeah. He had a bad back.
So then they get Jeffrey Weissman to play George.
Mm-hmm.
And what is crazy, too, is Glover filed a lawsuit because they used footage from him from Back to the Future. And he was like, I never gave them permission to do that.
Okay.
So he files a lawsuit, and this resulted in SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, adding clauses that producers and actors are not allowed to use such methods to reproduce the likeness of other actors.
Okay.
So what's interesting is it's just had further ramifications because as we get further into this digital realm, you can't just go, hey, I want to have young Clint Eastwood in my movie because digitally we can do it. It's like you would have to get the rights from his estate if he was. I'm acting like he's dead. He isn't dead, but he's old and you would have to get the rights from him and stuff like that. So
interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of good to establish that before it got out of hand.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, interesting.
And do you know if that was specifically for the clips they used from the first film or for this Jeffrey Weissman guy that they had to kind of like make up for the old, like the faraway 1955 shots, the like reshoots from different perspectives?
I'm pretty sure it is that they were using. That's interesting because maybe it's a little combo of both.
Yeah, because I feel like if you have the final product, you can kind of. Maybe back then it wasn't in the contracts, but I feel like if you have that final product, you could kind of do what you want with that final product. Like you own technically like quote unquote George McFly over Crispin Glover's face, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of, but I'm sure it makes me think of, the biggest franchise in the world right now, Marvel. I am sure, unless you're Robert Downey Jr., I am sure that you basically sign away like all of your likeness so that they can use it like anytime they want to, whether you're dead or alive or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't see how they would ever allow people to have that power.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you get paid a whole lot more than Crispin Glover was getting offered, I'm sure.
That's true.
That's true.
Hey, I'd love to be in one of those movies. I'd sign away my likeness, no problem. So, the people who made this movie are the same people from the last time. We have same cinematographer, Dean Cundy, same music, Alan Silvestri. I already talked about Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. So this is like the same crew. Everybody's behind it. Everybody likes what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I found out that Zemeckis told people that the hoverboards were real, but they just weren't releasing them to the public. So after this movie came out, people were like calling toy companies demanding that they release the hoverboards.
That's
not cool. That's not cool at all. That is upsetting. If I didn't hear that as a kid. If I had heard that and then found that out, I would have rioted for sure. To the courthouse.
Yeah. What a tease.
Oh man. And then the first draft of this movie had them in Act 3 going to the 60s, where Lorraine was a flower child protesting the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And they handed it, Bob Gale handed it to Zemeckis, and he was like, I don't really like that. But he said, we can do something that hasn't really been done before, though. And we can basically recreate the movie we already made, but add different perspectives.
And add the same characters again.
Yeah. So they both, it sounds like they're just like, oh yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And then that's when he said, also it'd be cool if they go to the Wild West. And then it starts snowballing.
No to the flower child thing, but Wild West is in.
Yeah. They also helped develop this motion control camera technology so that the scenes, like when they're at dinner and there's Michael J. Fox son, Michael J. Fox daughter, can all be in the same shot.
Okay, cool.
And like that whole set, everything is just super glued because they have to do those shots over and over and over.
What do you mean super glued?
Like the plates and table and all that stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I have on notes for the movie.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's mostly the same cast of actors. You had mentioned Jeffrey Weissman, so he replaces Crispin Glover as George McFly. He's in Saved by the Bell, like a episode of it. Twilight Zone movie, Pale Rider, and then Elizabeth Shue, who replaces Claudia Wells as Jennifer. She's in The Saint, Leaving Las Vegas. She's in Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. And she's also in Adventures in Babysitting. And then I did not know that Flea was in this movie. That was,
oh yes,
that was like a shock. And it's just, he is a very interesting person. So guys, if you don't know, Flea is in the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah. Well, the fans call him RHCP, but sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But he is just he just pops up and just the weirdest things, sometimes not the weirdest things. So he was like, in Baby Driver, The Big Lebowski, Fear and Loathing. Those are just a few. He's in like a million more things.
I mean, he was in Obi-Wan.
He was?
He was at the beginning. Remember, he couldn't catch Princess Leia because she went under a small branch and he couldn't catch her.
Yeah. It's funny whenever he pops up in something, it's just like, I am distracted now.
Did you two ever see the movie The Chase with Charlie Sheen and Christy Swanson? That'll tell you what era it's in for those two to be the leads in a movie. But it's about Charlie Sheen takes this rich girl hostage, and they go on the whole movie's in a car chase. And Anthony Kiedis and Flea play these two guys that are trying to it's a highly publicized chase, so everyone's watching it on TV. So they try to crash their car into Charlie Sheen's car. They're hilarious, the two of them. It's such random casting, but that scene alone is worth watching that movie.
I mean, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
that's great. Isn't one of them in Speed, or am I misremembering?
Well,
that?
Anthony Kiedis is in Point Break.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I mean, I just can't imagine that they would mesh with all these great directors that they've worked with. I'm just so confused by them having so many cameos throughout multiple decades.
I mean, it's at this point to me where it's like, oh, Flea's a get. You got Flea in your movie?
yeah, but around this time,
random.
like how is oh man, I'm totally having a blank moment here. But Catherine Bigelow,
yeah,
how is she like? Yeah, I want to work with Anthony Kiedis.
In what?
In Point Break.
Oh right, she did that. Yeah.
I just can't reconcile that in my head.
I don't know.
Or like the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, let's put him in The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah. And he looked weird aged up. It looked weird to me.
Oh, I mean, can we talk about how the aging up makeup has not aged itself very well?
Yeah, it is. It's strange.
It's watching it this time around for me. It's high school drama school play worthy to me almost. Yeah. Like it's those lines on Michael J. Fox's forehead.
Oh my gosh.
No good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's not even mentioning the breast augmentation, which is
of Lorraine.
Frightening.
It
is frightening.
Is.
Which I do think is very intentional. They're very making that very intentional that it's frightening and strange. But that I kind of love how insane she looks, but it's also like a little hard to look at her in the movie.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Weird.
Especially if you're a young person going to the movies. I think that would be a little jarring. Although the first movie did have like some pretty intense sexual innuendo and assault and stuff like that. So I guess that's just Back to the Future for you.
Yeah.
It's a great way to be brought up for sure. Just wholesome movies.
Totally.
No, the makeup on those, it's like that. It looks so unrealistic. Like it's just like there's no movement. I don't want to, harp on the boob makeup, but it just they don't move like they're actually attached to her body. It's just very statuesque, which I guess adds to the comedy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think it's funny because it's 30 years in the future. Yeah. And Marty is like a teenager, in 1985. And I just feel like he looks way too old. Like, I know 30 years is a long time. I know. But he looks like a grandpa.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny. I think you can even go back to the first movie and even kind of think that for the parents.
Oh, totally.
But I get like it's all kind of exaggerated.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of funny too.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is kind of sidetracking here, but I forgot to mention that for me, I watched this movie at a friend's house at one point. I thought it was fine, but then I rewatched it on October 21st, 2015, and that was really fun because that was the day they go to the future. And then I watched it again.
Nice.
Last night, and I like it a little more each time.
Yeah, I remember I was in Chicago in 2015, and I was at a bar. I forget where it was at, but it was all just filled with Back to the Future. Like everyone was like, the Cubs are gonna win this year.
Yeah,
and it was a very fun time to be in Chicago. That was people were really getting into it.
Well, and it was crazy because the Cubs won in 2016, so they just like barely didn't get that. That's so insane.
It's so cool how close it was, but if they didn't pulled it off the year before, that would have been something else.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Did you two ever get to go on the ride?
Yes.
I don't
at Universal.
think I did, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember loving the ride.
The ride, so because I grew up in LA, so I would go to Universal all the time. That's also why this movie is so like exciting to me, because I would go and I love the tour there, and you always get to see all the Back to the Future stuff there. Obviously, that's like one of their biggest films.
Yeah.
But that ride, before they replaced it with the Simpsons ride, was one of the best rides of all time. It was so fun as a kid, and they had to take it down eventually because part of the ride is that you go into the future, and the future is 2015. And I think they realized as we were getting close to 2015 that this ride's kind of dated, and people are really going to point it out when they're writing this thing in 2017. But yeah, I have such good memories of that ride and of Universal Studios in general. I had a friend growing up whose dad was the VP of Universal.
Wow.
Of Universal Studios, not not films. But so my friend had he had one of the hoverboards they used in the movie.
Oh my gosh.
It was coolest thing in the world as a kid. And I remember in 6th grade we had to shoot some kind of report for something about pretending like we visit different countries and learning about their cultures. Mm-hmm. And his dad got us all onto the lot for Universal. And we got to, I wish I could find this video or track it down, awesome. Because we got to use the DeLorean and pretend like we traveled back in time to all these places that we could shoot on the lot in Universal Studios for all these great moments in history. I mean, I wish I had that video because it was probably the worst script, but the settings were incredible.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Well, I don't know if you realize, but you just described if Bill and Ted had the DeLorean instead of a phone booth.
Wow.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
It was for a school report, and it was traveling in time so that they could do their report well.
Wow, it's a hat on a hat on a hat.
Yeah. Insert guitar riff here.
Yeah. That's cool. I remember that ride was one of my favorite rides at Universal as well. And when they changed it to Simpsons, I remember discovering that, and I'm like, oh, that really sucks. I really like the Back to the Future ride. And then I remember going on the ride, hadn't really watched The Simpsons at that point in my life, and I laughed the whole time. It was so funny to me. So it's personally for me, it's bummer that it's not Back to the Future, but I did laugh the entire time on The Simpsons ride.
Yeah.
I mean, what I liked about the Back to the Future ride was that Thomas Wilson, I don't think he gets enough credit for these movies overall. Because he by far, I feel like he has to do the most.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I was so happy that he was in the ride. He was the main antagonist in the ride.
Yeah.
He stole Doc's DeLorean, and you have to track him through time and bring him back to the present. And I was so happy. I was even as a kid, I was good. I hope they paid him a lot of money for this. He deserves it.
Yeah. Upon watching this movie yesterday, I just realized that Biff is the center of this universe.
Yeah.
It all rides on him.
It really does.
That's crazy.
Tom Wilson, I mean, so he just brings a completely different energy to each movie. Because I mean,
no, not each movie, each role within each movie.
Yes, but I mean, because I'm even thinking of Back to the Future 3, and he's doing something totally different in that movie.
Yeah,
and he's like hardly even recognizable under all of that makeup and stuff. He is. It's just hard because Doc and Marty are so iconic that you just kind of are like, oh yeah, and then there's Biff.
But I think he is as iconic. But he's just not as, like, but you just think of Marty. I don't know. I would argue that he's as iconic as them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would certainly, I think because this movie is making a, it's riffing on Trump, not to bring down the mood, but I do think, like, our generation has kind of embraced, like, memifying that sort of thing with Back to the Future, and I think it's made him this character even more iconic.
Sure.
I mean, I would prefer if we were just like, who's that person that they're riffing on? But unfortunately, we don't have that. Anyway.
Yeah, it does make that whole 1985 alternate universe a little sadder to watch it now than back when I was a kid, for sure. It's a little too real.
Yeah, unfortunately, but in our timeline.
Not to date this episode of when we're recording it too much, but I did think it was funny when I was watching this movie, and he's going back to get the almanac, and I was thinking like, oh, that must be what the FBI is trying to get at Trump's house. That's my fun joke.
And cue the laugh track.
Yes, I'll have to add a laugh track because no one's laughing. But was there anything else that plagued the production that we haven't covered?
I'm trying to think. I know Robert Zemeckis was heavily involved in Who Framed Roger Rabbit around the same time.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, that's on my other list of perfect movies.
Oh yeah,
that movie is perfect.
That I just watched that one recently too, and that one holds up. It's incredible. Yeah. That one, like Back to the Future Part 2, the makeup hasn't aged so well. Some of the future stuff hasn't. For some reason, something about Roger Rabbit with the animation and the human characters interacting with cartoons. It's incredible that was in the 80s that they made that movie.
Yeah.
It's
so good.
That movie is baffling to watch. If you put on your like, how did they make this hat? It's really hard to figure out.
Yeah, I stay up at night sometimes thinking about how they got that weasel to splash Eddie Valiant with water and hit when he's washing dishes in the sink in his kitchen.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and there's a great video essay YouTube guy, Patrick Willems, who you maybe know of. And he has this whole, like, I want to say it's like 40 or 50 minute breakdown of like the entire career of Robert Zemeckis. Mm-hmm. And he talks about how he kind of has like I hope I'm representing it well, but this theory that it's like Robert Zemeckis is always trying to play with his toys.
Yeah.
And this was this magic time where he was playing with the toys, pushing the boundary really far, and doing things like Roger Rabbit, doing things like trying to make his own movie again within another movie in a sequel.
Yeah.
And it's before he gets into doing all the weird photorealist CGI Christmas Carol and Beowulf and all of that stuff. Motion capture, that's the word I'm looking for. But anyway, yeah, he's a very interesting filmmaker because he is playing with his toys. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has a movie about a vet who like has to play with toys in order to like process his emotions. Mm-hmm. The Welcome to Marwin. So
yeah.
Anyway, he's a very strange filmmaker, but I like him.
Yeah.
So should we just dive into this plot here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go through the movie.
Sure.
So the movie begins, and we're right where Back to the Future ended. The recreation is kind of insane. It is like they do it almost perfect.
Yeah.
These shots and stuff. Even watching it just 2 nights apart, I was like, I can't really tell if they're the shots that don't have Jennifer, if they're reshooting them or if they're just from the other movie.
Yeah, you can watch split. There's like on YouTube if you Google it, or if you like search it, you can find split screens, and it's pretty fun to watch. They got pretty close to most of it.
I should do that. So they do that, and then they take off where we're going. We don't need roads, but then Biff has been waxing the car, and he looks up and he's like,
"Well, he's running out to show Marty his matchbook collection, or his not collection, his new matchbooks."
Yes.
For his business.
And he sees this thing fly off and disappear, which kind of starts the process of what we're going to see.
Yeah.
And so then, as we kind of already discussed, they land in 2015 and immediately throw Jennifer. They literally put her outside of the car.
She's in the DeLorean, like, we're going to the future. We're married. Where do we get married? What wedding dress do I wear? How many kids do we have? And he just like kind of does that Men in Black thing, kind of, right. But like it knocks her out. She's out.
and then just like literally it doesn't even leave her in the car. They set her in the alley.
They're in an alley and they just put her there, and Marty's like, is she going to be okay? And Doc's like, it'll only be a couple of minutes. It's fine.
Yeah, why the alley? That was the one place you could leave. Why not? Did he say why he couldn't leave her in the car?
No.
He had to go.
No, I don't think
just leave her in the
so.
car? It makes no sense.
Does Doc take the car, or does he just leave the car there? No, he takes it because then the police come.
He takes the car.
Yeah. But she could just be with him in the passenger seat or something. I don't know.
He must have. I can't remember. He must have said something.
Yeah.
And maybe people are listening to this and screaming at us.
Yeah, probably.
But it does seem like they could have found a nicer place than like on a couple of boxes near some trash cans in an alley.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. It's interesting.
And Marty, boyfriend of the year.
I know.
How about we don't leave my girlfriend in the trash for this in the future? We're all alone. Come on, step up.
Yeah, he should have learned a little bit with his last adventure. There's a lot of creeps out there. He found his dad was a peeping Tom. Biff was doing, assaulting people. I mean, he knows the creeps are out. He should.
He's about to find out that people don't like it, or he doesn't like it when people call him chicken. He develops that little irk in 30 years.
Right. I forgot that he didn't have that in the first one.
I know that's such a weird thing because it really plays, and even with the music cues and everything, it makes it feel like, oh, we all know this.
But what's crazy about it too is it is that alone has caused major life events to happen in his life. Like, he doesn't play music anymore because he got hurt about something with a car because someone called him chicken.
Yeah. He loses his job.
Now he's like kind of a loser, loses his job. Yeah, it's very interesting.
That would be like if I was going to change anything with this movie, I'd be like, get rid of the chicken thing and figure out something else.
Yeah.
Because then they also use it in the third movie as well. And it's just so strange to me.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the chicken?
It's maybe it played back then. Maybe the toxic masculinity was a little bit more intense back then. So if another guy called you chicken, you had to get all huffy and puffy about it. But it's just like the least insulting insult, if you ask me.
Yes.
To get angry about.
Very much so.
I would laugh every time if someone called me chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Isn't there a point when like our present Marty, they call him a chicken and he gets mad? Or not?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think the old guy because I think in the 80s shop, I think old Biff calls him chicken or young Biff.
Yeah.
I'm kind of forgetting at the moment.
I just think it's funny because in the first movie, I think they do a very good job of showing Marty as like this cool guy, but he's kind of silly too. But he's also he's not stupid. Like, he's figuring all this out. And then in this movie, it's just like one word. That's kryptonite.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But it's also like there's too much other cool stuff to really. Only because we're sitting here talking about Back to the Future for well over an hour, are we going to get into the chicken stuff? But so Marty gets out and he's at the town square, and this is when we start seeing the crazy fashion. Mm-hmm. They wear two ties in this 2015. There's a Jaws 19 directed by Max Spielberg.
I didn't catch the name. I just saw that it's now this time it's really, really personal.
Yeah.
And then like a hologram comes out to try and eat him, and he says the shark still looks fake. Funny.
Love he's got shoes that, put themselves on him.
Self-lacing shoes.
His jacket, like you press a button and it is your size suddenly, and it dries you. Love it. Love all of it.
Yeah. How often are people getting wet in their jackets that it dries you off? I guess if you're walking out in the rain and stuff, but
maybe
it
that's
just seems
what it
weird.
is.
Yeah, or maybe a lot of people fall into that lake.
It is a big pond.
Man-made. Yeah, that's
In the behind the scenes, and I think it's a 25th anniversary, so it's still it's a few years ago. Steven Spielberg is talking about the movie, and he's like, I really thought someone was gonna make those self-lacing shoes, and I that would have been cool. That was the one thing I really, really wanted to happen from this movie.
That's funny.
And I know Nike has done like versions of it.
Well, there's like a video of Michael J. Fox putting them on.
Yeah, but I mean, it's never been like, it's never. It just seems like that is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I feel like we should have that technology, like on every shoe, where you just put it on.
I think the closest we've gotten is Velcro. It's not self-putting on, but it's pretty easy.
Yeah,
we were way ahead of our time with the Velcro, and I don't even know why we have laces at this point.
Yeah. Same. But he needs to do something. His son is going to go be sentenced to prison for 15 years, and they'll come up to that decision in 2 hours because they abolished lawyers by 2015, which is very funny to think about. Like, how did we get there? But his son's going to go to prison. So Marty needs to like act as his son, go to the 80s cafe, and this guy is going to come to him, and he has to tell him, I'm not in. It's like, that's all Marty has to do.
Yeah.
Simple.
I'm sorry to keep making us go back.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out.
Well, I mean, it works for this movie, right? Sometimes you got to go back to the past.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I do have to point out my favorite joke of the movie, which plays on a joke in the previous movie. Doc, once they land, he says, I have this rejuvenation mask, and he takes off his mask, and he looks exactly the same, and he says, it's taken years off of me, or something to that effect. This joke that he is always like looking younger or older, and he always looks exactly the same. Man.
Does he see as like a new spleen too? Like those kinds of things are just like so common to like those kinds of surgeries in 2015.
I don't remember that, but
I think he has more things
great.
done than just his face that's like kept him youthful.
Yeah. They go to the 80s bar, which it's just so funny. I love that idea because it's like we have nostalgic 50s bars, and then the idea that in 2015 there'd be enough years that have go by that we'd have a nostalgic 80s bar. Mm-hmm. Which in a way, I mean,
I'm sure there's a nostalgic 80s bar somewhere.
We've got a few out here. There's a really great like 80s arcade bar in downtown LA. That's a lot of fun.
That sounds cool.
Well, see, there we have it. I mean, even the very cycle of movies is just now making its way out of the 80s into the 90s, but around 2015 and early 20s. Well, we're still in early 20s, but it was 80s. So they kind of nailed that. Elijah Wood is in this scene.
Never noticed that until this time.
Yeah, this is apparently his first appearance ever.
Wow.
Before,
so
I
crazy.
guess it's like pre-Radio Flyer, The Good Son.
Wow.
It is crazy. We had to rewind it because I caught it like right as he was like after he delivered his line, and it really took my breath away. It was crazy.
He's so cute.
Yeah. And funny.
And also, there's like a Wild West video game, which is kind of like some foreshadowing on what's going to happen. And Marty like is quick drawing on it. So I don't. Are you a fan of the third movie as well?
Yeah, is anyone? I mean, look, hey, we all know that's like the least of the three.
Yeah.
I'm not like not a fan of it, but as far as if you put it up against the first two movies, it's like, do you want to watch an old guy fall in love on a horse? That's the plot of the third one. Not to spoil it, but
Yeah,
which is fine. There's places for that too. But I enjoy it. It's just not as good as the other two for me.
Do they get into, because Doc is such a man of innovation and excelling humankind? Do they explain why it's the Wild West out of everywhere else he wants to go to?
Well, no. In this, he gets struck by lightning, so it's random. He gets sent back.
No, he says
randomly.
in this movie, "I want to go to the Wild West," because he was going to. Oh. I think he said it in this one where he's gonna, maybe he said it in the last one, but he's gonna destroy the time machine because it's just too volatile, and he said it's just as a bummer because I really wanted to go to the Wild West.
Oh, I completely don't remember
that scene. And
then
in this movie, he does say something where he's like...
Oh, you're saying in the first movie he says
I think he says in the first movie,
okay.
but I'm getting it mixed up now. But then I think in this movie he says, he'll never... something that he's always afraid of and doesn't understand is women, which I know he covers in the... Yeah. He figures that out by the third movie.
Huh.
But he does say that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he had it clocked in, and then it got struck by lightning and sent him back.
That's what I think happened. It was like accidentally put in, or he was like using it as an example. Let's say we want to go to the Old West or something like that, and he put it in. So it was like it was on there, so that when it got struck by lightning, he got sent there.
Yes, that's what happened.
That makes the most sense. Yeah. Or wait, are you saying it does say that and I just missed it, or you're
No, I think he says something along that when he's like showing it as an example. Like, let's say we wanted to go to the Old West, 1885 or whatever. He puts it into the thing but never actually travels there. And then
it's like not his intention.
It's on the DeLorean when it gets struck by lightning. So that's where he goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so then we meet Griff and Biff. There's old Biff, right? Grandpa Biff and young Biff. Is it Grandpa Biff or is it? Yeah, it'd be Grandpa Biff.
It's his. He's always like, we never see parents.
No,
it's always skips a generation.
Yeah,
for some reason.
Oh yeah.
Griff interacts with his grandpa Biff, and then 1955 Biff is living with his grandma. We don't see her, but we don't hear about his parents at all. I don't know what the deal is with. Maybe it explains. Maybe absentee parents are why they're such assholes. Those tannins.
Yeah. What do you think about Tom Wilson's performance as Griff?
Love.
You love it?
Love.
He's so it's like it's over the top, but it's perfectly over the top. Like it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not over the top where it's like these should be caricatures almost.
Yeah.
And that's why I think he's so good. I think it's over the top without it being like bad over the top.
Yeah.
Well, and I think something that we've talked about a lot. I don't know if it's been on the podcast or just in general, but when someone is so good like Tom Wilson at doing something zany, it is often, like you were saying earlier in the episode, it's often kind of looked down on, or it's like, well, that's not a serious role though. And I'm thinking like I would think it'd be harder to do what he's doing in these three movies than a lot of best actor performances. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he should have won an Oscar for this movie, but I am saying there is Leonardo DiCaprio could not be in this movie. He couldn't. And he's one of my favorites and I love him, but he could not pull this off. No way. Daniel Day-Lewis couldn't do it.
The Lewis himself?
Whoa,
wow.
He couldn't do it. Only Tom. I'm saying only Tom could have done this.
But now you have me imagining a world where Daniel Day-Lewis plays all the Biffs in the Back to the Future movies, and I need to see that. If there's an alternate timeline where that happens, I am going back to make sure I get to see that.
I think that's why he needs to come out of retirement.
He is the process that's going to make Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis go, we're ready to make Back to the Future 4.
That would be something like, they'd say like, we'll make those movies when Daniel Day-Lewis agrees to be in them. And then he's like, oh, I'll do it. And then like, uh-oh.
Yeah. He's like, all you had to do was ask this whole time.
Yeah. That was supposed to be our When Pigs Fly.
Interesting.
But you know what I'm saying, right?
I know what you're saying.
I mean, maybe Daniel could do it. Leo, not so much.
Okay.
I think Daniel Day-Lewis could be Doc Brown. I could see him doing
Yeah.
Doc Brown pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that, the voice is not that different than Daniel Plainview from There Will Be Blood, really. It's a little
really
similar.
isn't that different, yeah.
He just needs to talk faster.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be the only difference.
Marty, I'm an oil man.
Okay, so there is, but okay, now I do want them to make a fourth movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting.
I'm like, I don't want them to touch it, obviously, because they're so sacred. But at the same time, if you get the right people involved and the right, they could come up with something. But I hope they don't touch it.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember if we said it in the last episode, but we'll definitely say it next episode. I mean, as late as this year, Bob Gale has said that there is no chance they will ever make another movie. And he's like, they have a deal with Amblin, or I don't know if Amblin's still a company anymore, but whatever's going on, like Bob, they own the rights to it. And I think no one's allowed to make it without both people on board.
So how did the show happen then?
Well, I think that's a little different because they also have like video games and stuff.
That show animated?
It is, yeah.
Never seen that.
Yeah, they had like the Bill and Ted show and they had the Back to the Future show.
That's right. Okay.
But all of that to say, he has assured us that it will not happen.
Yeah.
He has no interest in it.
Is that included when they both die, or is that like is Universal going to be like, let's do this. They're gone. Let's do 15 of these. Go.
Well, I'm going to try and research that some more for next week's episode because they made it sound like it, like the way Bob Gale talks about it is very much like it's not possible. It won't happen. But, I don't know. Maybe he has some sort of deal that then his estate would then take over and they would also like nullify the option to ever make it. I don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah. It would be weird because by the time they could make the movie, they would not be able to use any of the cast, most likely, except for in like a, Bill Murray and Ghostbusters role kind of thing. That's all they could do.
Like a cameo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they'd be like, hey, guys, you planning on going back to the future? And the audience would be like, ah!
Yeah, I've done that. Oh my God, it's Marty McFly.
Yeah, so now we have the whole big hoverboard sequence.
Yeah. Well, here's a question I have about his son. Is his son just like stupid or something? Like he's just acting. No, he's just acting so different.
I think he's just aloof.
He's just weird. He's just kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, just kind of geeky. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
He's kind of like the 2015 version of George McFly, I guess. Just kind of,
Oh yeah, I like thinking of it that way. Yeah.
He just wanders around, gets into stuff that whatever. Apparently.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
yeah.
Sorry, you mentioned those jackets are supposed to fit to you. Why are his sleeves all over the place?
I don't think he's hit the button.
Oh yeah, he's probably not thinking too straight there.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, also on just like a writing level, I think it's.
So we know who's different.
Well, and the idea is just kind of funny. Like this really cool guy made this kid who's a dweeb and is not cool at all.
I'm going to take back weirdo. I'm going to change it with eccentric.
Yeah, an eccentric billionaire.
An eccentric Marty Fly. McFly.
Marty Fly.
But yeah, so we get the hoverboard sequence.
It's cool.
This was, as a kid, like one of my favorite scenes ever in a movie.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
This movie has a really interesting balancing act where I think we would probably all agree that there is enough new ideas in this movie that they're not just like replicating what they did, but they're also smart enough to know like we kind of have to give the people what they want.
Yeah.
So they're like doing the hoverboard and even, going back to 1955, it's like you guys liked it before, now you're going to like it again. But the fact that they're also commentating on those things as they're happening takes it to this level that's so much better than just when you watch a sequel where they just kind of do the same thing again to get the same response.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it works because it's like they need to do these things. So it's like they need to go to the future to prevent this thing. And then they think they did it. And then it's like, now we need to go into the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're right there with them.
One of the genius things that was really sticking out to me, and it happens, I would say there's probably at least 10 shots in this movie where timeline A, will say, walks into frame, does something, and then as that person's doing something, timeline B like does something in the same shot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what takes this movie from just a run-of-the-mill sequel thing that's directed by like a gun for hire to like, oh yeah, Zemeckis is like, he is keyed in, and we're literally seeing in one shot how complicated juggling timelines is.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to tell the story of this is getting complicated because one thing's happening, and as they do that, that person's gone now, and this is happening, and this.
Yeah, I feel like it's the only time I've seen in a movie where it's a timeline situation, and now we're in a loop situation, kind of, where Marty has to get the almanac, but he also has to still make sure that his parents kiss. Like, while his other version of himself is still also making sure, but like that version of himself is in jeopardy because the bullies are coming after him now, which didn't happen the first time.
So
yeah,
good.
Unless it did, and we just did not know, and that's what's going on. And we're like, how many Martys are now in 1955 trying to fix what the other Martys have done, really? And just the more you think about it, the more your brain wants to explode. So you just gotta accept it and go.
Yeah,
I do appreciate the my fiance Skylar. Whenever we watch like movies with time travel and stuff, it can get confusing a lot of times. So I really appreciate it in this movie where Doc Brown draws the simple thing on the chalkboard with the timeline and just the alternate, and it's like that's what I need in every time travel movie. Just draw me one of those like 2-line chalkboard drawings so I know what's going on. Spell it out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that in this movie.
Definitely, me too.
Yeah, that is always helpful. And like, again, I keep on referencing last episode. Of course, again, that's what this movie does. References the previous one. I think a lot of movies just assume that you've seen Back to the Future, and then they're like, we can skip that step. And sometimes that can be to their detriment.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's funny, like in Avengers Endgame, when they're like, are you basing all your rules on Back to the Future? And Ant-Man goes, yeah. And they get to do what Back to the Future 2 did as well, because they get to visit the old movies, which is fun.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker. If you're going to go back to an old movie and interact with things, I think I'm pretty much a guaranteed ticket sale on that.
And Harry Potter does it too in the same movie. They go back to earlier in the movie, and I think it's always fun when you do that and you do it right. And especially in that one, I think it's fun because they plant the stuff ahead of time, and then you go back and you see what was going on.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, because that's a Prisoner of Azkaban, right? Yeah, with the pumpkins and
because originally, I think Harry gets hit by a rock, and he looks into the trees, and Hermione says something like, "What do you see?" And he's like, "I thought I saw." Never mind.
Yeah.
And they keep going. That's great.
That's good. Let's see. So now, do we have anything else on hoverboards? I want to make sure we covered that. That's iconic as it gets.
Just one of the best delivered lines in movie history when Griff's thugs say hoverboards don't work on water, and you get the guy who goes, unless you've got power. It's just one of the best lines of all time.
Yeah, it's good.
Don't know why he says it like that, but man.
Yeah,
every time I watch that.
So good.
I love that the little girl ends up with Griff's hoverboard. She's like, I got the pit bull now.
Well, there's another joke in this movie that actually this beat out the rejuvenation joke, which is when Marty punches Biff in 1955 and he grabs the almanac, and there's the man that's standing over him, and he goes, "Hey, I think that guy stole his wallet." And then everyone's getting around, and he's trying to help him and stuff like that, and he goes, "Yeah, I think that guy stole his wallet." And then Biff goes away and turns around, and then he nearly looks in the camera and goes, "I'm pretty sure he stole that guy's wallet." 3 times.
That really worked for me.
That's one of the best roles in the movie, for sure.
It really
He's
is
funny. Yeah.
I just threw my phone across the room, but we're back.
Did you drop your wallet?
I think I dropped my wallet. But yeah, so then Marty has the idea, because he's kind of hearing hints that he might not be rich.
Yeah.
And so he goes, hey, I see an almanac. I could go back in time. Because someone says, man, if I'd only bet on the Cubs. And it makes him think, I'll go back in time and I'll do that. So then he grabs the almanac. Doc catches up to him and he goes, okay, we stopped your son from making the bad decision and getting arrested. The newspapers change back. We're good. Mm-hmm. Let's go back and we'll be done. Mm-hmm. But then Doc throws away the almanac or drops it. Can't remember which.
He throws it away.
Throws it away.
Throws it away.
But Grandpa Biff has been eavesdropping.
Snooping, yeah.
Yeah.
By the trash cans. Everyone likes to hang out by trash cans in this movie. Yeah. Well, Jennifer didn't have a choice, but...
She didn't.
Yeah. Well, and I do like how, because it's been 30 years, but he looks in the alley and he goes, a DeLorean. And it jogs his memory from that moment that we saw only 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But it was 30 years ago for him.
Now, do you think that moment we saw 10 minutes ago, he had already seen a DeLorean from his past, technically?
Like when he was in the 50s?
Because now we know we're going to have a DeLorean chase coming up with Biff. You know what I'm saying with the time loop? This is where my brain starts exploding. Okay, so that moment we saw at the beginning of the movie where he goes, a flying DeLorean, was he saying that because he recognized it from that crazy time in his teenage years where Marty was going after the almanac?
My brain's exploding.
So this is what I think happened. And I wish I had a chalkboard and I wish our listeners could see. I think you have timeline A, which is before any time travel has happened. And that is where George gets hit by the car. And then they go back and they create timeline B. And we see that it affects change. So the end of timeline B, they're like rich. And that's when this movie starts. So in timeline B, they never traveled back in time. Or Biff would have never seen the DeLorean.
Sure.
So then they go to the future, steals the almanac, comes back. Now they're in timeline C, but they're still able to go back to the beginning of timeline B and live that out, creating, I guess, timeline D. Did that make any sense at all?
It did.
That's how I view it. But
this is a podcast, so unfortunately we don't have a chalkboard for people listening. But I think it was helpful.
Yeah, so I think this Biff has not seen it, but then he will have seen it eventually.
Makes sense to me.
But there actually might be more timelines in this movie once Biff goes back, and because then there's so much. I mean, yeah, you could grab a whiteboard and really go to town on this movie.
I'm sure you could look this up. I'm sure there's a chart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess after like that whole like chase sequence and the crash into more manure and all that stuff, he probably has a different future. I feel like maybe he gets committed or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So he would not just be like
think about that,
running his own little auto detailing business or anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, so do you remember how the third movie ends?
You know what? I don't.
Because I don't either, but...
That's when it ends where he goes and picks up Jennifer and he's in like his Western garb. And then they finally go for a drive in the truck and Needles comes and tries to drag race with him and he calls him chicken and he doesn't act on it. And doesn't hit the car that was responsible for him hurting his hand and not becoming a famous musician or whatever.
Oh, what?
Wow, yeah. Don't remember that at all.
They really made you wait for that payoff between these two movies. I forgot. Yes. Sometimes I feel like that's in the second one, but it's not because they're not done yet. They're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, and which character is Needles?
Needles is Flea.
Oh,
so Needles, Needles is a teenager in the third one with Marty.
Oh man. Okay.
Because apparently in this universe, you always end up staying in touch with your teenage bullies long into the future.
I think that's the true moral of the story, is you just really can't escape it.
I guess so. I got no argument against
Biff
that. Yeah.
just rules your life. Everyone has their own Biff, and you can't escape them.
Okay, so back to Back to the Future, 2015. He's got the almanac, and then they go to Marty's
Jennifer
house.
gets picked up by the police, and they take her home.
Yes.
And they need to go get her, pretty much.
Right.
So we are in their home. They live in Hilldale, which is like ritzy part of this town, but it's not anymore. In 1985 it is, but in 2015 it's a dump. So Marty's like, this is so cool, I made it. Yeah. He like doesn't understand that it's not cool anymore. And that's when we meet his parents. We get not Crispin Glover. Michael J. Fox is playing all of his children.
Yeah.
Which I didn't remember that. So that was like, it was so confusing to me for a second that I was like, this girl looks like Michael J. Fox. How does that work? But
strong genes. That Marty McFly's genes. Like, they don't look a single thing like Jennifer. They just look like Marty McFly.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And Jennifer, she gets to have a little bit of fun here.
Yeah, I like
hiding in the house.
I like the feint she has is hilarious. That's a great feint. Putting your hands up, kind of like you're popping out of a bush and then falling to the side. That's a great way to feint.
I'm old.
Yeah, and she says, "I'm young," and then they just. I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah,
but it is funny because it's like, okay, we fainted her again. Now we don't have to worry about her again.
Yeah.
Even the old version of her had to get knocked out. It's just, she can't win.
Which apparently saved the universe, or prevented the end of time, because Doc said
that was...
if she sees herself, they will either pass out and it'll be fine, or it rips space-time continuum.
Yeah, you're right. And meanwhile, Biff steals the DeLorean, goes back in time, gives the almanac to Biff of the 55.
Mm-hmm.
Which
I guess we'll come back to that scene in a second.
This movie does such a great job as far as like storytelling goes, where you have this goal, and then it's like obstacle. Now we got a new goal. Obstacle. Now a new goal.
Yeah.
Because like if you think about it, their first goal is to go stop Marty's son from being arrested, and that's like accomplished so quickly in the movie. And then we just keep getting these like obstacles that change the goal as you go along. It's just I appreciate it so much.
It makes for such a quick feeling movie. I love.
Yeah, totally. And it's fun too that the movie is like, it has such 3 distinct acts that are actually like 3 different timelines. So the movie just keeps feeling fresh. And it's also cool that the first movie is so simple, and then this movie's like, okay, like time travel's complicated. Let's go for it now. And I just I am such a sucker for like time travel starting to get more complex.
Yeah.
They hydrate a pizza, which I don't know how they accomplished that, but that was cool.
That was cool.
Well, I guess they probably just took the pizza out, put another one in the same shot, and that would have been easy.
I think they I read that they had like was it Domino's or Pizza Hut? That was
Pizza
in the
Hut.
movie. They had like a on-set coordinator who was there to make sure every time they did the shot that the pizza looked great for the shot or something.
No
It was
way.
part of their sponsorship deal. Yeah. They wanted to make sure the pizza always looked good in the shot when it came out of the hydrator.
I like that too. That it's not just a
amazing.
pizza; it's like half pepperoni, half bell pepper.
Yeah.
It's a very specific pizza. It's like Pizza Hut wants you to know the variety that they have.
Right.
And when she pulls it out of the oven, and I like to imagine that the pizza does this. I do not think this is a continuity error.
Okay.
But it is full and it is not cut. And then as she sets
not
it on
cut?
the table, it's cut.
Are you sure?
It's not cut when she pulls it out of the oven. But then when she sets it down, it's cut. And I imagine that the pizza self-cuts because it's the future.
You mean when she sets the mini pizza?
She sets the mini pizza, then when it hydrates, it's just a whole pizza.
Oh, I don't think I noticed that.
And then she sets it on the table, and it's all sliced up.
Crazy.
And I'm sure it's a continuity error, but I like to imagine it's the future.
Yeah.
And of course, there's someone who just watched the movie and is like, actually, he's wrong. It was cut the whole time.
Do you think?
But I don't think it. I really don't think it was.
Do you think that when this movie, they're working on it, it's 1989, it's Pizza Hut, and Pizza Hut, the execs are like, look, hey guys, can we try to get this to happen by 2015? Do you think there was just a small department of people trying to figure it out?
The self-cutting pizza?
Or just
the hydrator.
Or the hydrator.
Pizza. Like,
I'm more interested in like the pizza cutting itself. I mean,
they're like, which either one comes first? We'll take either.
I don't think that happened.
Oh, okay.
I'm not yes-anding you here. I don't think that happened.
Okay. But yeah, so they have dinner. We learn a little bit about family stuff. This is shortly after Marty gets fired from his job because what does he do?
I didn't quite.
Like Needles
catch this.
convinces him to. It felt like a bet or something. Or
well, he does call him
gambling
chicken
thing.
if he doesn't like put his card in a machine.
And his boss is like monitoring all transactions or something. And
I still don't know what he did or what he did wrong or what he did that was upset his boss, but clearly you should not put your card in that little machine there.
Oh.
If Flea asks you to, don't listen to him.
Yeah. Don't fall under his peer pressure. I think it's
the movie nails multiple channels on big, wide, high screen definition televisions and video. I mean, we are doing this podcast on a video conference, just as Flea and the boss would.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
it's not
pretty
telling
impressive.
us though your favorite food and the food that you don't like.
Oh, well, it's self-cutting pizza, obviously.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to figure that out. Technology needs to figure that out.
You were about to say something else. I cut you off.
Oh, I don't know, but I just feel like the boss stuff. It doesn't matter what happened. It just matters that he got fired.
Right.
Like clearly.
Right.
Right. And by the way, they leaned heavily into the fact that fax machines were going to be around far into the future, and that's a little upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were like 5.
Yeah, all over the house, fax machines.
When did the fax machine come out? I mean, it's pretty old. It wasn't like kind of exciting in the 80s at that point, right?
I'm very into trying to find out when it was invented, but please keep talking.
Well, it's just I wonder if
it had to have been in the 80s.
Okay.
Right?
Because if it was relatively new, I could see them being like so excited at this new invention that surely it would still be around.
Okay, I got it. When was the fax machine invented? The first recognizable version of what we consider the telephone fax was invented in 1964 by the Xerox company. But the technology that led to the advancement was created much earlier. In fact, it was Alexander Bain in 1843 who invented the electric printing telegraph.
But maybe it didn't become very popular until like the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, so this
movie. So you're saying that technically in Back to the Future 3, we could have had some form of fax machine.
Yeah.
We could have, yeah.
In the Old West.
Yeah.
There could have been a whole, the fax.
They leaned heavily into the fax machine in Back to the Future 3 too.
So now, after all of that, they go back to 1985.
Uh-huh.
And when they're there, this is when they drop Jennifer off, and they're not realizing that like the neighborhood looks all strange and rough.
Marty comments on how he doesn't remember bars being on the windows.
Yeah.
They're you know what? Marty and Doc are so oblivious sometimes for two like smart guys.
Uh-huh.
It's like you said in the first movie, Marty figures all this stuff out. Doc is obviously a genius of sorts, but they're so oblivious to so many things. Like Marty, all you got to do is stay by the DeLorean, and he sees a dog being walked by itself, and that's like, oh, follow this dog being walked by itself. He could have saved Biff. You could have saved this whole movie by not being oblivious. And now when they land in this timeline, you don't notice any of this stuff, that all this stuff is off, that there's like abandoned cars crashed into trees outside your home. I don't understand.
Yeah, it takes someone putting a shotgun in his face to
his
really
principal.
wake him up. Yeah.
Which is a pretty funny scene.
Yeah.
By the way,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to cut you off there because I do want to talk about that, but I just wanted to jump back to when Biff returned with old Biff returned with the time machine in that scene.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Because there's that moment where he comes out and he's like he seems like he's injured when he gets out of the. So I read today that was because initially he was supposed to be like fading away, like Marty is fading away in the first one, because he went back and he kind of like changed the past. So that, I guess in the original script, Marty's mom kills Biff in the 90s or something, so he doesn't live that long. So that's what he's parking I guess it got too complicated. So, but that's why he's all like injured when he pulls out of the DeLorean.
I took that. I know that he didn't like crash land, but I just took that as an old man landed on some trash. Like
that's what I think. Yeah, that's what I think they just assumed. Everyone would just assume that he's an old man. He's traveling through time. You know, it's got to do something to your body and brain. I mean, clearly it did something to Marty and Doc because they're oblivious. But yeah, apparently it was just supposed to be that he was like going to start fading away. And there's some deleted scene that show that. But
oh man,
I thought that was interesting.
Gonna have to look that up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. Thank you for bringing that. That's interesting. So now, they're in the present. Marty finds this principal, and the principal like has a shotgun in his face, has no idea who he is, and he's saying like, "I'm Marty," like, and Michael J. Fox, his acting just great. He is so distressed in this moment, fantastic. And then like a group of students drive by the principal's house and shoot up the house.
This is like the equivalent of like, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so." Instead of eggs, it's bullets.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not a good future. And Doc already says he's going to dismantle the time machine. And I couldn't remember if he started to do it.
This is when he says it's a bummer because he wanted to go to the Wild West. I
think you're right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But when we were watching it last night, it'd been long enough that I thought, is part of the whole thing that they do start dismantling it in this time period, but he doesn't. Because he said he's going to, and then Marty goes to like the town square, and there is the Biff Pleasure Palace, I think is what it's
Pleasure
called.
Paradise?
Pleasure Paradise.
Well, he goes to his home first.
He does go to his home first.
Oh, right. And it's not his family that lives there.
Yeah.
And he like jumps through the window, and there's a girl like in his bed, and he's like, "What is happening?"
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that all these homes are very heavily protected by bars and stuff like that, but Marty's able to jump right in through a window conveniently. But
and so then he finds Biff's tower. And that's when there's the great, and I'm also a sucker for this, when a movie like catches you up on what happened through like a History Channel or like a television show or a commercial. And so you're finding out that
I love the picture. So it's like Biff won it big and at 21 years old at the racetrack, and he looks so like, I won. He looks so cute in that picture. Like, I can't believe it.
And it's just this monument to him. It's like a documentary he clearly made about him, saying how great he is. And he married Lorraine,
his high school sweetheart.
Yeah, and I think, isn't the wedding photo, isn't she like pulling away from him?
It's a video, I think, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the guards grab him, Billy Zane and
the crew.
Yeah, this is also the thing. They just like, everyone just stays friends with their friends and bullies from high school, and it's just always around.
I guess so.
And then he wakes up like he does in Back to the Future, and he hears his mom. So it's fun that the series has him waking up with his young mom, and then waking up with like, I guess it's the same. It's the same time period of his mom, but she feels like older and like worse for the wear in this one.
And she knows who he is.
Yeah, and she goes, "Oh, we're just here on the good old 17th floor.
27th floor.
27th floor. The 27th floor."
Uh-huh.
And then you find out this whole dynamic.
And he says, "Mom, you've gotten so big." That's another good line.
Yeah, and that's when you find out like she's married to Biff, and Marty is not Biff's kid. Which when the movie is going, I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not, but man, it wouldn't make any sense if it was.
Yeah.
And then they explain that George died. And did he die from a chicken-related incident too?
No, Biff shot. Well, I guess in the newspaper we don't know, but Biff admits to shooting him.
Okay, I'm just getting my chicken conflated.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, we have no proof that maybe Biff did call him chicken, but I think that's a strictly Marty issue, the chicken thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, a newly discovered issue for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this whole sequence is kind of it's very uncomfortable. I think it still is a very uncomfortable sequence. It's intentional, and I am not at all faulting the movie for that. I think it's good, but it is, and again, Tom Wilson's bringing like a third performance to this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy.
Yeah. And is this the scene where, like, when it ends, Lorraine's like, I shouldn't have said that. It was my fault. I should respect
You're right,
him.
Marty. I shouldn't have said. She's always got that old voice.
And she just sits back down and continues drinking.
Yeah. And I saw that Leah, is it Thompson?
Yeah.
She in the featurette I was watching, she was just saying like how that part of the performance and the character was like so much fun to play. Like she just had a ball shooting this movie.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And so I mean, gosh, there's so much in this movie.
Well, no, at the end of the scene, his mom tells him, your dad is dead.
Yeah.
Like, don't you remember? So that's when he goes to the cemetery, I think.
Yep.
And finds his dad's grave.
Yeah.
And then Doc finds him and is like, this is all bad. We have to fix this.
Yeah. Where?
With Einstein, by the way.
Yes.
We're raving about Thomas Wilson's acting. That dog's acting in this movie. The whole time every time the dog was on scene, I was like, how did they get the dog to do this? This dog is brilliant.
Yeah.
Dog's brilliant.
The dog is so good. I
love
love when
expressions and everything.
They're back at Doc's even more disheveled house, and the dog's just trying to get his bed like flipped over. And Doc does it for him, and he lays down, and it's so cute. But yeah, that's when we find out like his dad is dead, and Doc has been committed. He's no longer this like eccentric innovator. He is a crazy person. In this version.
Yeah, so I have a question, a technical question. So, yeah, Doc Brown is like legally insane.
Yeah.
Now, are there two Doc Browns in this 1985, or he's just been labeled that and
Well, the picture looks like he's being committed.
I think there's
but there's only one Marty in this 1985.
Well, there isn't, because they say Marty's at boarding school, so that's why he's not coming in.
That's right.
Contact with that version of him.
Yeah, and this is the scene.
They throw that line away. Yeah, he says like you're supposed to be in boarding school in Sweden or something.
And this is what actually Doc explains it in the scene. That's when he goes to the chalkboard and he does. This is time, and this is where we are. So we're in this version of it now, and I think that's why there is doubles.
Okay,
see him in this timeline.
So, oh man, that hurts my brain a little bit, because that makes me feel like since they affected change in Back to the Future 1, there should be two Martys and two Doc Browns there should just be two Martys.
What?
At the end of Back to the Future.
When he goes to the past?
No, in the present? I might be going down a rabbit hole here, but in Back to the Future 1, when he comes back, since it affected change and like his house is different and everything is different, there should be another Marty in that universe. Because we're now in a different timeline than the one that existed that he traveled from.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Don't think about it.
Yeah. We've got to stop, because we're all going to pass out in the next 4.5 minutes if we keep at it.
Yeah. I can't take much more.
Yeah, I'm sure I could come up with a silly explanation that would work for me. Maybe the DeLorean landed on Marty and killed him when he came in.
There you go. Just like in Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
That seems like a I mean Rick and Morty move or something where they would come back or something and like land on their alternate selves and be like, okay, well that cleans up that mess. Let's keep going.
I'm sure that has literally happened in an episode.
Yeah.
For them.
This, I mean, I obviously Rick and Morty is based on Back to the Future. Of course, everybody knows that. But I haven't watched the show in a long time. But when I was watching this movie, I was like, oh, this is the movie that Dan Harmon is like.
And Justin Roiland.
Really, is really like must have sparked the idea. The first one maybe a little bit, but this one with all the crazy timelines and balancing everything, I'm like, that's what they do on every episode of that show.
Yeah.
Or at least when I still watched it, they did.
Totally.
Yeah. So now they have to go to the past. And I would say this is my favorite sequence of the movie. I don't know. What's your favorite of the three sections of this movie? What's your favorite section?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, this is where, this is the best because because it leads to like the climax of the film and everything. But again, I love the future stuff. The Biff stuff is fine in between the middle stuff, the rich Biff stuff. But I'm always like anxious to get to the next part. So yeah, I'd say this is my favorite.
I think
section.
Me too. Yeah.
So, and what I love too about them going back to the past again is I love the simplicity of like something as small as an almanac is changing the universe. And so it's not like there's a nuclear bomb that's going to go off if we don't do this or that. It's like we have to make sure that Biff gives Biff the almanac, and we have to let that happen and let Biff get away, old Biff, and then get the almanac. And I love it's like that's hard, and that's a lot of stuff they have to do, but it's so simple, and yet that changes so much.
They have to make sure that old Biff gives young Biff the almanac so that old Biff doesn't get wise to them again. Is that why?
Like so, because if you go and try and like stop him from doing it, then it doesn't like he can still change things. There goes my brain again. But they got to let him do it, then leave, and then they've got to think he did it, and then he's gone, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Right.
Yeah, because if he stays, or I mean, if he knows that if they get the almanac before old Biff leaves, then he'll never have left, which means they would still be in 2015.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But with the branching time, anyway, we're starting to hurt our heads here. I
have a nosebleed.
But it's so fun that we have stinking Marty following Biff. And again, this is what I'm talking about. Like the camera's tracking as Biff is walking down the street, 1955 Biff, taking a playground ball from kids and throwing it up into a balcony, which I love.
It's funny.
And then in the same shot, Marty is like following him. Mm-hmm. So you are seeing the two timelines interact in the same shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my bread and butter. I love that.
So Biff is picking up his car after it's being repaired from all the first maneuver situation.
Yeah.
So, and that's when old Biff meets him. And then we see Biff be a super nice guy to Lorraine again on the street in front of many eyeballs.
Right.
Little fun fact for you there. The mechanic who Biff kind of like argues with a little bit with the paint cans is, I think his name's Charles Fleischer, and he is the voice of Roger Rabbit.
What?
Very cool.
And also, like, I don't know if you know anything about like the behind the scenes of Roger Rabbit, but he actually performed Roger's scenes in like a rabbit costume. It's really funny to look up if you ever do.
Oh man,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. So you could see him in that this little like Roger Rabbit costume or like rabbit ears. But yeah, I guess Zemeckis, tossed him in this movie. I know he was in the future. He plays one of the older guys that interacts with Marty briefly. But
oh, okay,
very cool.
Man, that is cool. Yeah. So. Gosh, talk about another thing that is great about this movie. The first movie is kind of like testing the grandfather paradox.
Mm-hmm.
in its own unique spin. And then this movie's like, if you had a time travel and you could make millions of dollars, that's like an age-old question. I think if you're talking about time travel, it's like, oh, if I could do it, and it's testing that.
Yeah.
And then I think the third movie, they're like, everybody wants to go to the Wild West, right?
Yeah. I mean, that one's just simple.
Not as theoretical as the other two.
It's for the fax machines.
Yeah, right.
Then we have the great scene where Doc is interacting with Doc as he's setting up the lines for the electricity. I just love that whole sequence.
I like how like our 1985 Doc like comes upon this and kind of is looking at it all nostalgically.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I remember that day. So stressful yet so fun.
Yeah.
That's kind of how he's taking it.
And when he says like, can you hand me that 3mm wrench? And he goes, don't you mean a 5mm?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right. And then the almanac gets taken by the principal. And then the principal goes into his office and he's drinking like whiskey or something like that. And he's sitting there. Marty's trying to get it. And Marty does eventually get it, but it is like...
The book jacket is on Ooh La La.
Right, that's what it was.
Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Also, that's maybe the second best line delivery in the movie.
Yeah, very funny.
Ooh la la.
And then they do... Marty is looking as he sees his dad come to punch Biff while he's in the... Or no, well, he's not in the car anymore, but Biff's is now in the car. And they do our favorite. They do a split diopter shot.
Mm-hmm.
So Marty's in focus and they're in focus, and there's the blurry edges. Love that. And then the guys are going to jump Marty, so he has to stop them.
The bullies.
Oh, yes, which you kind of had mentioned earlier with the dance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have to jump them, and then he has to figure out a way to not let himself see that he is trying to stop the bullies.
He does it pretty easily, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean,
he just
gotta
drops the sandbags on him.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy, but he does it great. And then he gets the almanac, but Biff catches up to him.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, Marty's stupid and he lingers a little bit because he's watching. Look, you just got back from living this.
This was like yesterday.
You really have to sit there and watch this right now. You're on a time crunch, buddy. And he ends up slamming the door in his own face.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is probably super metaphorical in a million ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't we all slam the door in our own faces from time to time?
Definitely.
Every day.
Yep.
Every day, yeah. Every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I always run into a door.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Haven't figured out the layout of the house yet. So then the sequence where Marty is chasing Biff through the tunnel on the hoverboard is great.
Yeah, I love it.
Just great action chase filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Tunnel featured in. Any guesses?
Roger Rabbit?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Yes. That's the tunnel that they go through to Toontown, I think.
Right when you said it, I could like see them both, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Okay, wait. And
right there.
He worked on those movies around the same time? Do you think he just overlapped some film days?
It's possible.
Well, I think, yeah, because Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I'm sure came out before this. That came out in 1988. And this comes out in 1989. So he probably like finished filming Roger Rabbit and like started filming this.
What I'm saying is he's doing the Roger Rabbit tunnel. And then he's like, let's get Michael J. Fox and Tom Wilson in here
Maybe.
too.
It's possible. I would not be surprised if they did that for like location shoots or just like there's.
I mean, they're making 2 movies, Back to the Future 1, 2 and 3. And they are making the first movie within the second movie. So if they decided to just throw in an extra shoot on Roger Rabbit, I don't think it's above these guys.
I would love someone to write a book about it, namely like Zemeckis' like biography. I would love to read about it.
Sure. That'd be a very interesting read.
Yeah.
Although I don't know how his personal life is, but hearing about all the movies would be cool.
That's why I need the biography. I need it all.
But yeah, and in the tunnel, Marty's able to like use the hoverboard to go around.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all this business trying to get the almanac. Eventually he gets it, is able to grab the flags that...
The nope flags?
Yeah, the nope flags that have dropped down. He grabs them, and then Biff goes into manure, and he goes, "I hate manure."
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah. Well, who likes manure?
Besides gardeners.
Do they like it?
Well, you got to use it to fertilize.
I mean, I can appreciate that. Like, maybe they appreciate it, but I don't think they like it. It's gross and...
Good point.
I mean, I think George Costanza likes it because he talks about how a beautiful word it is. Manure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Did you guys do a Seinfeld intro? Did you get around to that one?
No, because they're not. They weren't long enough. They're
I guess they're not constant.
Yeah, we didn't get to do a lot of like our really favorite like shows and movies because a lot of them don't have credit sequences that are worth kind of like talking about.
Yeah. Well,
like we couldn't do like Breaking Bad because it's just like a little.
Oh yeah.
It's
5 seconds.
It's upsetting, but yeah.
I know, and with streaming, I mean, like opening credit sequences are becoming less the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of sad. I like a good credit.
Well,
sequence.
I feel like you and I have in watching shows that come out right now, like What We Do in the Shadows. We never skip that intro.
It's a great
intro.
That was actually one of the last shows credits we did before. Actually, I had never published the episode, but we did record one for that because I love those credits so much. Yeah, those I never skip either.
Yeah,
the song is so great.
It is, and we never skipped The Sopranos, not once.
We didn't skip The Sopranos once.
We semi-recently watched that for the first time in our life, and never once we skipped that.
Yeah.
We loved it so much.
Yeah, we just watched that recently too. I saw it during the original airing, but Skylar hadn't seen it ever, so we went through it too recently. It's just, oh man, it's just one of the best.
It really is.
Yeah, it was. I need to watch it again.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
It's been less than a year since we finished it.
I agree. Yeah, I miss all the characters already so much.
Yeah. I'm always waking up this morning and getting myself a gun, so I just gotta finish it out.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
What is? I'm sorry to change it, but what is your favorite credit sequence for a movie?
Oh my god!
Or
I'm trying to think what we.
Or I meant TV show.
Like,
I'm sorry.
For some reason, the first thing that jumps in my head is DuckTales.
Okay.
I don't remember how that one goes.
Oh my god, the theme song to DuckTales is just one of my favorite theme songs of all time. They were just like something about my childhood and coming home from school and watching that. It's just one of my favorites.
Nice. I'm gonna look that up. It's been so long. Cool.
Oh, it's very catchy. It's a good song.
I think I'd have to give it to The Simpsons for me.
Oh, that's another one we never skip. But also, it's kind of different every time.
I love that it's different every time, and the song is just. I've never gotten tired of that song.
No,
Danny Elfman just.
No.
Yeah, Simpsons we wanted to get to also, but because that's such like a big one, we were saving it and just never did. But much like the Bob's Burgers opening credits, we never skipped that intro either because they've got just like the Simpsons, they got little Easter eggs.
Yeah,
you get to see something different every time. So
you'd be a
it's
fool
fun to watch
skip them.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Also, I like the song too.
Right.
It's just
love
a good
that ukulele.
Song. Yeah. It's great.
Well, I would hope that you love it. I mean.
Yeah.
You're talking about it a lot.
We use it to intro our podcast too. So don't sue us, Bob's Burgers, please.
They're not. We don't have any Bob's Burgers listeners who create the show. I'm sure.
Oh no.
Oh, you never know. You
never
know.
True. You never know.
Maybe we do. Come on the show anytime though. If you're involved in that show, we'd love to have you on. Just reach out. So then Marty burns the book, and his matchbook. That's the I keep wanting to say Trump Tower.
Pleasure Paradise.
Pleasure Paradise turns into something else. Mm-hmm. So they know they affected change. And then Doc is like going around in the storm, gets struck by lightning, and Marty thinks he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And this sequence is incredible.
The man rolling up in the car.
Yeah,
like a second later.
The emotion of Marty.
Yeah.
His cry. It's like, oh man, this looks rough. And I would imagine if you were not in the know, and without the internet, I don't know if you would know that they're making a third movie, and you'd be like, wait, this has got to be wrapping up soon. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then this mysterious man comes up and he goes, "Are you Marty McFly?" And he goes, "Yeah, who's asking?" And it's like some company. I can't remember what he says. But
I think it's Western Union.
Western Union.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And he goes, "We've been having a bet whether you'd be here, but we were instructed to give this to you. It's a 70-year-old letter."
And this is a funny movie thing that is so okay. But to me, it is just, I know it like it works for a movie because it's filmmaking, but it's like, oh, why did he get the letter wet?
Oh, yeah.
It like drives me nuts.
So upsetting.
Yeah. It's like he is holding history. If it
well,
is
and I'm like, what if it gets so wet that he can't read it, and then he's like stuck.
Especially as a kid, that's going through my head. Like, no, go under the umbrella.
But it
also,
looks so cool.
If we're nitpicking here, why did only one person come if they were so interested in seeing if this was
I did think about that.
If everyone was just like, oh.
Yeah, he's the skeptical one because he said, "I lost the bet."
Right.
Yeah. That he went too.
But yeah, and then he reads it, and it's this thing it's Doc Brown's letter, and he says that he's alive and he's in 1855. And then the movie like pans out, and it says to be concluded.
Right?
Or I'm sorry, what did I say?
1855.
Yeah, 1885.
Which is what time was what was going on in 1855? What would Doc Brown be up to if he was? I'm horrible at history, so
1850.
The last
that'd be pre-Civil War.
Yeah.
Post-Revolution.
Yeah. It's definitely 1885 because I'm sure.
Oh no, it definitely is. Yeah. But I mean, I think you just got.
Like, would he be wearing powdered wigs? Is
no.
that gonna? No.
I think it'd basically be the same.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think
maybe I'm wrong.
It's like we're in 1855. I wonder how many people. Like, I wonder when the Oregon Trail started. I can't quite remember because I think Oregon became a state in like 1849.
Wow,
so, like,
showing your state pride.
The
here.
West is like still not super. Like the Wild West, I don't think is as exciting as it is in 1885.
Okay.
Let's see.
And that's
here.
a guess. And it's before, because isn't it after the Civil War? That's when the government gave a lot of people in the war, like, if you go out to the West, you can claim land, and it's just yours. Is that post Civil War?
I think that's because 1843 is the Oregon Trail.
Okay.
Beginning. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be a lot of pioneer times.
Pioneer time.
Like Manifest Destiny. Like
that's First Cow era. The movie First Cow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is.
So I don't think that would actually affect the movie too much. It'd just be a bunch of small towns again.
A little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less people.
I think 1885 we're still a ways out, but we're getting close to the industrial revolution.
We're getting close to Daniel Plainview coming in.
We are.
Yeah.
There we go. Get him back in the mix.
Yeah. Okay. This is writing itself, guys.
It really
is. You knew we'd come back to DDL.
But yeah, so then it ends, and because this movie, no one had really done a movie like this. That trailer is not like an added addition. That was in theaters. It said to be concluded and showed a trailer because they were concerned that people would walk out and be like, what was that? Like, how long do I have to wait or whatever? And that's why it's like 1990, time concludes or whatever.
I imagine that's so exciting.
Oh, yeah.
But I also heard people were annoyed, too, because they did not know that they were not getting a conclusion to the movie.
True.
So they were kind of like, what?
Yeah. Like, you'd really nothing? Not even a little bit?
Well, I mean, also we have like the gift of hindsight where this movie has affected so many movies and franchise. I mean, that's our whole podcast, but franchises are king. And, you have some franchises that start and they go, okay, how can we set up like 38 different things in this movie and kind of wrap it up?
Yeah.
And this movie still pretty much wraps up. It just leaves like one dangling thread. And for in the 80s, people are like, people aren't doing this, so we're annoyed by this. But if that happened now, you'd be like, wow, what a refreshing, conclusive ending to a second movie.
Yeah. Wild stuff. Wild stuff.
Wild West stuff soon. But that's Back to the Future too.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, I love that last moment where he goes back up to Doc and Doc has just sent him off from the first one, has sent him off into 1950 or back to 1985, and then Marty comes running up and it's like, I'm back. I'm back from the future. And then he passes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. I love this movie.
It is great.
Well, have we all said our piece on Back to the Future 2? Did we miss anything?
I'm sure we did, but I think we've said plenty. Mm-hmm. I'm jealous that you guys get to go on and do number 3 now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel ever since I finished it and I just get that to be continued, I can't go on. I have to finish it.
Yeah, well,
so I'm gonna go.
You gotta watch it.
Yeah, I think I might right after this.
Even better. Well, thank you for coming on, Max.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
I'm glad. You were a great guest, and now it's time for you to plug. What do you got?
Just hey, if you happen to be a Bob's Burgers fan, come listen to Bob's Credits. As I said, it's we go episode by episode and we talk about the end credit sequences, which are, if you're a fan, you know how amazing they are, and how they change each episode. And if you're not a fan, it's a good podcast, to kind of like companion podcast to start watching, and I guarantee you'll be a fan within a few episodes. It takes a little while to get into the show, and for the show to find like its groove, but once it does, it's great, and it's one of the best. And yeah, Bob's Credits, we're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, same name all across the board there.
Awesome.
Right.
Bob's Burgers, it holds such a special place in my heart because it wasn't a show that anyone told me to watch. It was just like, I think my brother just happened to be watching it and I was not watching it, but I was finding myself just laughing. And I'm
it's
like, what is this
show?
Same here. Yeah, same. We started late. It's we started early on in the pandemic, and we just were like, we should give this a shot. We've heard good things here and there, and we just fell in love with it. And it's just so feel good.
Yeah.
And funny, and it's not mean like a lot of kind of animated humor tends to be, but it doesn't like sacrifice humor and kind of raunchiness when it needs to be raunchy. Because it's nice. Yeah, I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's so good.
And also just to mention too, the Bob's Credits episodes are not that long.
No, we try to keep them
easy
pretty
to jump
short.
into.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I
especially
know
the first few, we really kind of try to keep them around 45 minutes or less.
And our listeners are used to an hour and a half plus. So I mean,
that's nothing.
And I know we have some Bob's Burgers fans that listen. So I'm expecting
treat yourself.
I'm expecting you to head over there, give them a 5-star.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just quickly say, I don't want to take away from your plug, but I'll quickly say I'm pretty sure today the second single for my third album just came out. So anyone listening, please give it a listen. I'll probably have pre-orders for the album.
The song is called
As the Deer Panteth for the Water. It's a play on the hymn. Check it out. If that's not a plug enough for you, I don't know. That's pretty intriguing, I would say. So check it out. I think I'll have pre-orders for the album. More to come on that. But Bob's Credits.
Yeah.
Bob's Credits.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening, everybody. And we'll see you next week when we go back to the past.
3.